Hi guys. I know we've talked about this before, but I'm going to do this in do this one, and then I'm gonna go get the other stuff I need to do because I've got some things I need to be working on to get ready to go to Galleria. But we've discussed framing before and pen mounting. So I have these cuties because Birds of a Feather has always been one of my faves forever and always. If I ever could grow up and be someone, if it wasn't Barb and Alba, I was Birds of a Feather. But I don't even remember if this is United We Stand or not. And I know I changed something up. Who knows? I gifted the chart to someone. It's been stitched for some time. I don't think I put a name or a date on here. I tend to quit doing that. Sometimes I'll put it on the back or stitch on the side, but I didn't on this one. So it's been sitting around, and I have the frames. Miss Kimberly at Frame Up 2 made them for me because this chart had a small piece which says God Bless America, and you could do the small piece along with the larger piece, which is a cool thing to do. A lot of designers do that, and you actually don't even have to have your designer do that for you. You can do it yourself. You could pull things out. Guess what? The design police don't come get you. I don't remember which group I was on recently because I've been off and on, not too much because I've been busy trying to get ready and doing other things. But someone was like, is it an insult to a designer, or is it disrespectful to buy something that you like but then change the color or change the design around? And how people have talked about how they do that. As an artist, I find that totally fine because there's, colors may change. If you've got that ability to do that, I think that's really great. And I also think it's a compliment, and that is also another way I got into being a designer. I have a Bachelor in Fine Arts, and I was photography and painting. I wasn't gonna go into textiles, even though I'd stitched all my life. I didn't do that. And Edna Medlin from Threads of Gold was a friend of the family and a friend of mine. And I would always buy things. Like, I would always stop at her house. I never got to her shop, but when she moved her shop to her house, I would always stop there on the way to the beach and buy things from her. And she'd always make fun of me that I was always buy stuff, and I would change it. I would, oh, I love this, but then I'd go home and change the color, move things around and do stuff. And she kept going, Elizabeth, you have an art degree. Why don't you do something? And I'm like, oh, no. You just buy this and you change it. So she was one of my first distributors. And if it wasn't for Edna, I wouldn't be here pretending like I'm somebody wonderful telling you things to do. But no, she gave me the ability to do that. And not that if you change things, that means that you're going to be a designer. It could inspire you to be. But I think that a pattern and a kit or any type of idea to make something is a jumping point for you to do what you need to do that makes you happy. And there are some people, and there are some designers, and there are people in all types of mediums, lifestyles, jobs, whatever, that get very insulted if someone doesn't follow their specific directions. If we did that, we wouldn't be the group of people that we are, and we wouldn't have the things that we have. But that is just my part of the small little thing I'm telling you on how to pin mount and frame your own stuff. Now, I just was too lazy to go downstairs and get the scissors, and I didn't feel like having you watch me do this, but I just wanted to go over, because it is in steps, and this is a good thing to do. But what you, what you do when you want to some people lace. I like pen mounting because living in the South, things move around. We have a lot of moisture, and you can pen mount and lace. I do know some people that pen mount and leave the pins, like I have them here sticking out, and then they pull the fabric over, miter the corners, and then, which mitering is taking your corner and laying it down. So it's a triangle, and then you take the sides and fold them in. And see, you have a little meeting place there, and then you stitch this up to tighten the corner. And this is really a great thing to do when you're hand sewing items and you want a crisp corner. Marion Schooler has a great book. I don't know the name of it. I truly apologize. I will try to find it. But Marion Schooler is a wonderful designer that's from England, and she still produces her books, and you can contact her and see if you can get one. But she's a great explanation on how to miter a corner and doing cut work and other things like that. But anyway, you can miter your corner and you can still lace it. Sometimes when I'm doing pen mounting, I will still miter the corner, but instead of sewing it up, I'll take a pen and I'll like slide it in where it's going horizontally or just going into the foam core, but not to the front, just to keep the linen out of place. But what you do is the first thing you need to do, well, it depends on how you work with your framer. I have a wonderful framer, Kimberly, who's at Frame Up 2, and lots of times I'll go in and we'll just come up with a size, and then I'll come home and she'll cut my foam core for me so I know what size it is, and I'll center my piece on it, count it out, and I will stitch a basting line and start pen mounting it. So when she gives me the frame, I come home, drop it in, and I have a glaze point gun that's over 100 and some years old. It was my grandfather's. There are newer products out there to put your piece inside your frame, but I still use old school window glazer point gun. But anyway, if you can see, I did it with quilting thread. What I did is I found the spot on my piece that was the tallest point in the design. And then I decide, I like my stuff pretty close. So if I only want, like I think this piece is only I think we decided we wanted less than ½ an inch showing once it's stuck in there. So I figured the count of my fabric and counted out stitches. And with this one, I counted 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. About 24 threads, which would be 12 stitches. And it may not be even because your design might not be even, but I counted out how many threads out. It would put my piece even on my foam core. And then I stitched a basting thread using quilting thread across in the ditch between the threads. So I have a way of knowing that I'm pulling this properly over the foam core. When I first started doing this, I did the trick where if you lay your fabric on a hard surface and take a needle, you can pull your linen and you can widen the ditch between the threads, and that will give you a guideline to like do handwork or put in your pen, and they're actually called silk brass pens. I'll speak about that in 1 second. But that would give you a line, but it can move. So that's why I based, and some people like to do it, they don't like to do it, they don't like leaving it in, they try to stitch it so they can take it out. I just leave mine in, and that's another reason why I use quilter's thread, because it's coated, not coated, but C-O-A-T-E-D, as it being a process of having something over it, which will help the color not leach. I usually try, sometimes I'll pick a color that's close to it because I can see it and use it as my guideline. But when I'm showing people or I'm going to teach a class, I do use a colored thread so you can see it better. But as you can see, I counted out and I stitched in the basted thread on all the sides. And your goal is, and as I've told you guys before, I'm not perfect and my stuff is never straight. When I was in art school, everyone knew when I hung a show, even when I used the right equipment, when I would cut my mats, they were always crooked. Everybody would go, yep, Elizabeth did that show. She helped us with that. So I'm a crooked person. I'm an outside the line. So, and when I first started pen mounting and using silk brass pens, and they need to be called silk brass pens and be brass so they won't rust. They're harder and harder to find, and you know you've got true silk brass pens because if you try to put a magnet on it, it will not pick it up. There are some stores that and some companies that try to sell you pens, P-I-N-S, that they claim are silk brass pens, but they're not, because if you take a magnet and put it on there and it sticks to it, it's not a silk brass pen. But when I first started pen mounting, I used to think you'd find the middle and go from the middle out. And when I was doing that, I kept like having this bunch of linen and fabric too far on either side. And I was like, it would just start moving. And I was like, what is going on with this? So I was really lucky that there was a shop owner in town. It was Susan Richardson, who is no longer with us, was like, no, what you do is you stick pins, you find the corners and you stick a pin in each corner of your linen, and so it's in place. And then you pick one side and start. And they should be about 1/16 of an inch apart from each other. And some people love to stick it in and then just immediately push it through. Well, then if you have to pull it out, that's a hard thing. So that's why you see them sticking out like little porcupine pens. And you can see that some of them aren't straight. I will straighten them when I start pushing them in. But if you, so what I've done is I have put in my basting line. I have, I started at this, who knows what corner, but I started at a corner and I did about an inch, probably an inch of pens and stuck them in and I pulled it where the basting line was almost in the middle of the foam core. And so I put in about an inch of needles, pens, and then I stopped. I took the piece and I flip it around and I start at the opposite corner, because remember I told you I started over here, and on this side, on the opposite corner, I did about an inch of putting the silk brass pens in, pulling the linen and trying to keep the basting line in the middle of the foam core. So once I've done an inch there, I then flip the piece on its side. This way I started off where it would be normally on the horizontal, and I did the inch here and flipped it on the horizontal bottom, did an inch on the opposite corner. So then I flipped my piece, so I'm now doing the verticals. So I started at this side, which is opposite from, well, it's from here. Instead of starting right here, I went from here to this corner and I put in about an inch. So then I flipped the piece around and went to the opposite corner on the vertical side of my piece and put in an inch of pens. And then I then flipped the piece where I'm at the top again. Well, I didn't keep going this way. I started on the opposite side of my piece and I put in an inch or so of pens. And then I flipped my piece over, and on the horizontal side, just like I did on this piece, I started over here and then did this second, third, fourth, fifth. go to the 6th side and I did an inch here. So then I flip it to the vertical again and I do the same thing and go on opposite corners. I'll do an inch here and I'll do an inch here. And then after I've got that in and everything is tight and it looks like the corners are where they should be, I start slowly doing a 1/2 inch, depending on how large your piece, a 1/2 inch to an inch across the piece. And so what happens is your linen doesn't move and crawl to one side or the other. And if you see any bunching up as you're putting in your pens, you can pull the piece as you're flipping it around to make sure it's tight and it's not going to bunch up. And then you get it nice and tight. Now the next trick is you can push these in with your finger, but your fingers are going to be tired. But you can start with your finger, and as I can already tell, I put this in at an angle, so I'm pulling it out a little bit, and I'm going to push it in, hopefully, while I'm doing it in front of you. Well, I have to hold it up, but I'm pushing it into the foam core, which can be hard because you can also run into the other needles depending on where you're pushing this. Now what I'm going to show you is when I started pushing this in and I told you I'd put it at an angle, can you see the pen is coming out through my linen? You don't want that. I know that's an obvious statement to make. So we know that this is in at an angle, so we're going to need to pull this pen out. We're going to have to readjust how it's going into the foam core. Trying to do it again because it's going into an already made hole. But I'm going to push that pen. Let me lay this down. You're not going to be able to see this that well because I didn't position my camera correctly. But I'm going to shove it in, and then I'm going to use a chopstick or a piece of wood, a dowel. Sometimes you can use you can use all kinds of things. Yes, that's my son yelling in the background. Who knows what he's doing? But I have pushed that pen in, and you can see that it's in there flat. I push it, but I don't push it too far because there are times when I've had to pull it out. But I push it in, and again, the pen that's beside it is at an angle, so I'm having to pull that out and push it back into the foam core. Let's see if we can't turn this down so you can see this a little better. Yeah, I think we got that going here. I am pushing this pen down into the foam core, and I'm making sure that on either side, on the back and in the front, that the pen is not coming through on the linen. Now, it's going to take me a while to do this, so I'm not going to sit here and make you watch me. Once you've got it on here and you know it's plumb like this is, and it's not bunched up, you can go like, I'm going to do them all the way across this way and push them in, and then turn it and go the other way. I still sometimes, I guess it's just that I have it, to make sure that I keep doing it, is I'll probably will do an inch or so of these, push them in, make sure they're right, flip it over, push some more pens in until I get them to where they're all flat. And then once they're all flat, again, I'm going to miter the corner, which we talked about, which is pulling the corner piece down and then taking the sides and getting them to match. And then I'll either decide if I'm going to stitch it into place or use one of these silk press pens and just skim the back side of the foam core and hold it in place. It just helps it when you put it inside of the frame. You don't have to do it, but it also helps keep, and sometimes I will, that's why some people lace them, but what I'll do sometimes is also take a pen that's a bigger piece and put a pen here and just skim the foam core just to hold the edge of the linen down, and I will cut this extra linen off. So that is what I'll do before I insert it inside of this frame, and I will show this on another video on once I've done all the pens and it's able to put in there, and then I'll show you how I use my glazer point gun to secure the piece inside of the frame. Here, let me move this up so I'm not like peeking at you. But I will do that, and I will show you how to do that in another video. I'm crooked, but it's okay because we're ending soon. But I will show you how I put it in there and use a laser point gun. And then it depends on how far inside the lip of the frame that my piece goes into, that you either can put a piece of foam, another piece of foam core over, you can have a piece of mat board covered. You always want to try to make sure that it's acid free, but if it sits in there and there's enough space, you don't really need to fill in that space and it's sitting in there, then you're going to put your dust cover on. Now this is where I don't do what I normally should do. Some places have, framing shop has brown paper. I'm not sure how acid free some of it is. I'm quite sure that a lot of them use some sort of paper that is. I like for the backs of mine to be colorful. So I will get wrapping paper and I'll take double-sided, there's special double-sided tape, it's archival tape, and I put it over the lip of my frame, and I will cut the dust cover, which can be either the brown paper or wrapping paper, whatever you're going to use as your dust cover, and I put it on there, and then I'll use an X-Acto knife and cut it so you can't see it, and then I'll put in I use eyes, screw-in eyes, and I use wire on mine to hang them. Some people will put one of those, I don't even know what they're called, but it's a little piece of metal with little jagged edges where you can hang it on the wall. Depends on the size of your piece. And then some frame shops have little flaps that they attach to the back, and there's ways to measure it down, and I'll talk about that on my next video. But right now, what you need to do is find a piece of your finished stitched work. If you're really good at cutting and you have foam core at home, you can decide how far out you want it, and you can put in a basting line and then go to your frame shop and say, cut me a frame this size. But I honestly think that you should go to the frame shop with your piece. It should be ironed out, and then you lay it down, and then you lay different frame moldings on top of it, because there are standard depths or widths of the edge from where the edge of the frame is to where the insert is. Some of the larger frames have a wider space, so you want to know that you have that much space that's going inside of that, and that you have enough of your design outside of it showing, so you can so when you put it in there, it looks right. You know, some people do like putting their design right up to the side of it. I also don't use mats, very rarely. There are a few pieces I do. And I also don't use glass most of the time, even if it's not a piece that's a model. I just like being able to touch my stuff. It's textiles. So that's again why I like going in without my piece already with basting threads on it or anything. Go in with it ironed out, we lay it down, we start making decisions, and then we can properly measure out from the highest edge on each side of the piece of the design to know how wide we want it, and then what size we're going to cut the frame. They make the frame and we back into it. So this one was just pin mounting, basting the thread, you know, figuring out your frame, and you're going to be working on pin mounting this and then going back to the framer. Now some framers will, you know, you can do this with some framers if you want to do your own pin mounting, because they do charge you for it if you have them do it. And then you drop it in, you have your glass, you have your spacers, you have mat board, do whatever, and they'll put it together and assemble it for you. I like doing mine, so Kimberly's really great. She gives me my foam core. I go home, I do it, and then she calls me and says it's ready. I go pick up my frame. I come home. I make sure that this is all the way I want it to be. I insert it into the frame, and then, like I'm going to show you on another video, I use my laser point gun and I put it in place, put my dust cover on it, put on my screw-in eyelets, and I do my wire, and then I run around in my house, find an open space and a hammer and a nail, and bam, we're done. But that's gonna be on a second video, but this one will get you started. So this is just on pin mounting and figuring out your frame. If you've got questions, just contact me. Love you guys, bye.